Putin's Easter truce, a gesture of peace or a strategic gambit. The world watched with bated breath as Russian President Vladimir Putin declared an Easter truce in the ongoing war against Ukraine. This announcement sent shockwaves through the international community, sparking a flurry of reactions and speculations. This unexpected announcement, delivered with a calculated solemnity, promised a temporary halt to the relentless bloodshed that has stained Eastern Europe for over a year. The gravity of the situation was palpable as the world pondered the implications of this sudden ceasefire. Putin, known for his strategic maneuvering and cold calculations, framed the truce as an act of goodwill, a testament to the sanctity of Orthodox Easter. His demeanor was one of a leader extending an olive branch, yet the world couldn't help but question his true motives. However, the timing of the announcement, coming on the heels of significant Ukrainian military gains and mounting international pressure, cast a long shadow of doubt over the Kremlin's true intentions. Was this truce a genuine attempt at peace, or a strategic move to regain the upper hand? Was this a genuine olive branch, a flicker of hope in the darkness of conflict? The symbolism of the Easter truce was powerful, evoking images of peace and reconciliation. Or was it a cynical ploy, a carefully orchestrated maneuver designed to sow discord among Ukraine's allies, buy time for Russian forces to regroup, and ultimately shift the blame for the stalled peace process? The strategic implications were vast and complex. The international community, acutely aware of Putin's history of broken promises and calculated escalations, met the announcement with a mixture of cautious optimism and deep skepticism. Leaders around the world weighed their responses carefully, knowing the stakes were incredibly high. The world held its breath, praying for a miracle while bracing for the possibility of yet another cruel deception. The collective anxiety was palpable, as people from all walks of life hoped for a respite from the relentless violence. The stakes were incredibly high. The outcome of this truce could alter the course of the conflict, potentially paving the way for peace or plunging the region into deeper turmoil. After more than a year of brutal conflict, the war in Ukraine had become a humanitarian catastrophe. The scale of the suffering was immense, with countless lives disrupted and communities torn apart. Millions had been displaced from their homes, seeking refuge in neighboring countries. The refugee crisis added another layer of complexity to an already dire situation. Cities lay in ruins, scarred by relentless shelling and missile strikes. The physical devastation was a stark reminder of the war's brutal reality. The human cost of the conflict was immeasurable, a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the devastating consequences of unchecked aggression. The faces of the victims told a story of loss and resilience. The world desperately needed a reason for hope, a glimmer of light in the darkness. The possibility of peace, however fragile, was a beacon for many. As the sun began to set on a continent weary from war, the uneasy silence of the impending truce settled over the front lines. Soldiers and civilians alike held their breath, waiting to see if the ceasefire would hold. The world watched, waited, and prayed, hoping against hope that this fragile pause in the violence might signal the beginning of a long and arduous journey toward peace. The collective yearning for an end to the conflict was a powerful force, but the specter of doubt lingered, a haunting reminder of the countless broken promises and shattered truces that had come before. History had taught the world to be wary of such declarations. Only time would tell if Putin's Easter truce was a genuine gesture of peace or simply another chapter in a long and tragic saga of violence and deception. The world could only watch and wait, hoping for the best but prepared for the worst. A timeline of deception, examining the hours leading up to the truce. To fully grasp the weight of skepticism surrounding Putin's Easter truce, one must delve into the hours preceding its announcement. On that fateful Saturday, as the world prepared to commemorate the resurrection of Christ, a flurry of military activity painted a starkly different picture on the ground in Ukraine. Russian forces, defying the impending truce, intensified their attacks on key Ukrainian positions. The sound of artillery fire and the terrifying whoosh of missiles shattered the sacred silence of the approaching holy day. Reports emerged of Russian troops advancing on the besieged city of Mariupol, a strategic port city that had become a symbol of Ukrainian resilience in the face of overwhelming Russian aggression. Witnesses described scenes of indiscriminate shelling, with residential areas, hospitals, and even shelters bearing the brunt of the relentless bombardment. The timing of these attacks, so close to the announced ceasefire, raised serious questions about Russia's true intentions. Adding to the sense of unease were reports of increased Russian military activity along the Ukrainian border. Satellite imagery revealed a massive buildup of troops, tanks, and artillery pieces, suggesting that Russia was not, as Putin had claimed, seeking a de-escalation of the conflict. Instead, all evidence pointed toward a calculated strategy of escalation, a desperate attempt to achieve a decisive military victory before the international community could rally a more robust response. The hours leading up to the Easter truce were marked by a chilling dissonance between Putin's words and the actions of his military machine. While the Russian president spoke of peace and reconciliation, his forces on the ground waged war with unrelenting ferocity. This stark contrast fueled the deep skepticism that greeted the truce announcement. The world had heard Putin's empty promises before, and they were right to question whether this time would be any different. The world reacts skepticism and calls for genuine de-escalation. The international community's response to Putin's Easter truce was a study in cautious skepticism. Many leaders and analysts viewed the announcement with a mix of hope and doubt, recognizing the potential for both positive change and strategic deception. World leaders, wary of Russia's history of broken promises and strategic maneuvering, tempered their hopes for peace with a healthy dose of realism. They understood that while the truce could be a step towards de-escalation, it could also be a tactical move by Russia to regroup and strengthen its position. The United States, while expressing support for any genuine effort to end the bloodshed, emphasized the need for concrete actions to back up Russia's words. American officials highlighted the importance of monitoring the situation closely to ensure that the truce was not merely a facade. President Biden, in a carefully worded statement, urged Putin to use the truce as an opportunity to engage in meaningful diplomacy and work towards a lasting peace. He called on Russia to demonstrate its commitment by taking tangible steps, such as withdrawing troops and ceasing hostilities. Across Europe, the response was similarly guarded. European leaders, while cautiously optimistic, remained vigilant and prepared to respond to any signs of duplicity or aggression. European Union leaders, united in their condemnation of Russia's aggression, echoed the need for verifiable de-escalation. They stressed that any genuine move towards peace must be accompanied by actions that could be independently confirmed. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, while welcoming the truce as a sign of hope, stressed the importance of Russia demonstrating its commitment to peace through concrete actions, such as withdrawing its forces from Ukrainian territory and engaging in good faith negotiations. Scholz emphasized that words alone were insufficient to rebuild trust. The United Nations, tasked with maintaining international peace and security, also expressed cautious optimism while urging both sides to use the truce as an opportunity to work towards a negotiated settlement. The UN called for a comprehensive approach to address the underlying issues of the conflict. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called for a complete cessation of hostilities and urged Russia to engage in meaningful dialogue with Ukraine. He highlighted the need for a sustained and verifiable peace process. However, the memory of Russia's previous veto of a UN Security Council resolution condemning its invasion of Ukraine cast a long shadow over the organization's ability to effectively mediate the conflict. This historical context added to the skepticism surrounding the truce. The world watched and waited, hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. The international community remained on high alert, ready to respond to any developments. The skepticism that greeted Putin's Easter truce was not a sign of cynicism, but rather a reflection of the deep mistrust that had been sown by Russia's actions over the preceding year. This mistrust was a significant barrier to achieving lasting peace. The international community yearned for peace but remained acutely aware that true peace required more than just words. It demanded concrete actions and a genuine commitment to ending the bloodshed that had plagued Ukraine for far too long. The path to peace was fraught with challenges, but the hope for a better future persisted. Echoes of the past, broken promises, and the elusive search for peace. The skepticism that shrouded Putin's Easter truce was deeply rooted in the long and troubled history of the conflict, a history marred by repeated cycles of aggression and fleeting moments of hope. For years, the international community had witnessed a recurring pattern of Russian aggression, followed by empty promises of peace and hollow gestures of goodwill. Each new promise seemed to be a mere tactic to buy time or to placate international pressure. Each time, the world had dared to hope that this time would be different. only to have its hopes dashed by Russia's continued belligerence and blatant disregard for international law. The cycle of hope and disappointment had become all too familiar. One need only look back to the 2014 annexation of Crimea, a blatant violation of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, to understand the depth of distrust that colored the world's perception of Russia's actions. This event was a stark reminder of the lengths to which Russia would go to achieve its geopolitical aims. The Minsk agreements, painstakingly negotiated in 2014 and 2015, with the aim of ending the conflict in eastern Ukraine, provided another stark example of Russia's duplicity. Despite the detailed provisions and international oversight, the agreements were never fully implemented. Despite pledging to implement the agreements, Russia continued to provide military and financial support to separatist forces in eastern Ukraine, effectively undermining any hope for a lasting peace. The support was not just covert, but often blatant, further eroding trust. The echoes of these past betrayals reverberated loudly in the wake of Putin's Easter truce announcement. The world had seen these gestures before and knew better than to take them at face value. The world had been down this road before, and it had learned a bitter lesson about the true nature of the Russian regime. The pattern of deception and aggression had left a deep scar on the collective memory of the international community. This time, the international community was determined not to be fooled by empty gestures and carefully crafted propaganda. Leaders and analysts alike scrutinized every move, every statement, with a heightened sense of vigilance. The world demanded more than just words. It demanded tangible evidence of Russia's commitment to peace. Actions, not words, would be the true measure of sincerity. The onus was on Putin to prove that this time was different, to demonstrate through concrete actions that he was truly interested in ending the bloodshed and pursuing a diplomatic solution. The stakes were higher than ever. The world watched, waited, and hoped, but it did so with a heavy heart and a clear-eyed understanding of the challenges that lay ahead. The scars of past betrayals were still fresh, and the path forward was uncertain. The path to peace, as history had repeatedly shown, would be long, arduous, and fraught with obstacles. Yet, the hope for a better future persisted, driven by the resilience and determination of those who yearned for lasting